Hello, listeners, and welcome to episode 91 of Push to Plat. It is my pleasure today to welcome a guest that I've been wanting to speak to for some time. I know we've had a little back and forth once or twice on a late night Discord server chat. I like that phrase. But we're finally going to sit down properly and talk. He is a host of the long-time running Game Stuff podcast that's now on a bit of a hiatus as they go on to explore new projects, which we'll probably talk a little bit about today. He's partnering with his good friend Joe on this JKGamin. It's going to be a platform that offers streaming, podcasting, look, all sorts of things, and they're currently putting it all together. But look, it's my tip here to check these guys out at JKGamin. We will hear more about that as we go. But I am, of course, talking of the wonderful Kory, the GrounddGamer. He is a Canadian guest. I love the Canadian accent. So we're in for a wonderful conversation, and we will be talking about some PlayStation. I know we've been so firmly cemented on the Xbox side lately, but we are coming back home, back to center. Can I welcome you today, Kory? Thank you for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me, CJ. It's always nice. It's always fun to have talks with Australians. My best buddy is Australian. He's Australian-Canadian, so it's the best type of accent because all the Australians say he doesn't sound Australian, he sounds Canadian, and then all the Canadians say the same thing. So, it's pretty hilarious that that's how it goes.
I didn't think you could swing a cat in Canada without hitting an Australian, because it's been a few years since I've been there, but I remember about 5 or 6 years ago going to Whistler for some snowboarding, and it feels like another life ago, and every second bastard was Australian. You'd be going down the runs and you'd stop, be an Australian beside you, on the lift an Australian. They're everywhere in your country. Oh yeah, no,
like at the Whistler especially, it's the second home for them. I think during the winter months here for us, which I know is your summer, I think it's more Australians up in Whistler than there is Canadians.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. I'm glad we got a little snowboarding love in there, because I hear you're a keen snowboarder yourself as well.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, by keen, meaning I can stand on it for a bit, and when I fall down, I don't hurt myself as bad anymore, but yeah.
I love that. It's something like we used to do a ton in the last, getting older, it's a little bit tougher. It's harder to get up, so I can tell you, but it's something that I loved, and we were okay at it because we do a bit every year. And then going to Canada and Whistler, and then Jackson a few years ago as well in America, which are amazing places if you get the opportunity. And the level of skiing and snowboarding is just off the charts compared to, like, it's passable in Australia, but it's unbelievable how good the people over there are. You see these little kids that are like, 3 centimeters off the ground just flying down the hill. It's terrifying.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things where it's you, especially up there, like I said, it's crazy when you look at what people are and doing up there compared to like anywhere else. Living over here in Canada, we always take for granted, like, not everywhere gets covered in snow all the time. So it's one of those things where you watch some of the like kids, like when I grew up, me and my brother used to sit there when we were 10 and like not even have to go up to a mountain and just like take a skateboard deck that we have and just build jumps and start like freeboarding down tiny hills and stuff, or drifting down the middle of a road in your car. And yeah. We keep on forgetting, like the other day, especially right now with the cold front that's going through the US with all this crazy amount of snow. We're sitting there and they're like, oh, we have 10 centimeters. And it's like, oh, okay, well, that's like nothing, but okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah, look, we will. I promise we will move on to the games. It's an amazing country if you haven't been there, and it's no secret that I really want to live there, Kory. I'm continually on to my partner to move, and I thought perhaps before this pandemic we were finally coming back over to potentially look for places. So I'm still hopeful one day. I'm an aging gentleman. I may not have enough years left, but hopefully one day we will get to live in your fine country. But we sure as hell will not be living in the center of that country because it is freezing.
No, you come live with me. Like I'm on Vancouver Island, so there. I mean, you know where Whistler is. So just a
couple of hours,
just a little bit off to the side, and that's where we are. So this little boat ride, that's it, and you're right there on the mountain.
I love it. Let's swing back to the games, and I want to hear a little bit about your gaming history, and in particular, I want to hear about this name, the Grounded Gamer, that you play under, because having listened for some time to the Game Stuff podcast, you're always referring to this, but I never got the backstory because I was a later joining listener. So I want to hear a little bit about your history and also tie in that name as well for me.
Yeah, so the history behind the name is, if you, for those who don't know, it actually has two meanings. So one of the biggest meanings is that when I was little, to, the nature of, like, back in the day, it wasn't seen as much. Today it's definitely not seen as much. Where, kids have, temper tantrums over video games. That was, but my parents didn't put up with that shit. So when I was 4, and I just kept on, like, that was my life, was gaming, and I was like, my brother touched that thing, I was beating the shit out of it. My parents were like, you know what, you're done. We're selling it. You're not having it anymore. Like, you can't fit. They told me that I was grounded until I was 16 from owning a physical console in the
Wow.
house. That's so that's where
Yeah.
it all started. So at that point in time of being grounded, my whole life growing up, the only time I played anything was playing at my friends' houses, or somebody I knew, or at the arcade, or all those types of things. So because of that, I never, that was, let's see, just to age myself, that would have been 92, 93 when I got grounded. So I missed from 95 to 2004 of not owning my own console. So during that time, during, the PS1, the Super Nintendo, the PS2, you know the PS1 especially, I never owned anything. So I only played what people had. And because of that, now if you go to your friend's house and he owns a Nintendo 64, he's not going to show you the same game that's on the PlayStation. He's like, let's play Zelda, let's play Mario, let's play, Metroid. When you go to your buddy's house that's got a PlayStation, he's like, let's show you Final Fantasy, let's show you GTA. So, and if my buddy had an Xbox, then it was like, oh, here's, here's Halo. Lucky enough, by the time that Halo and the Xbox first came out, or just after the second edition, when they came out with the Mini, that's when I finally got my first console. I got the to give you an example, the first console I ever owned physically that my parents actually gave me was my PS2 Mini with the internet jack in it.
Wow.
That's how long through the PS2 cycle that I
Yeah.
finally got one. The first time I got a console was, I was gonna say, the first one I actually got was the reason why my parents broke the rule and bought me that console, though, before I was 16, was
Mm.
because my grandpa at the age of 14 sent me his Nintendo with all of his games, and then my uncle right after that sent his Super Nintendo with all of his games. My parents were like, well, he's already got them, we can't stop him now. So I'm sitting there playing Nintendo and Super Nintendo when everybody else is jamming on PS2s and Xboxes.
Mm.
So
That's
it's one of those
fantastic.
reasons how, for me growing up, even though I'm a hardcore PlayStation guy, I've been very grounded in the sense of, like, grounded to look at everything naturally. Yes, I'm a huge hardcore PlayStation guy, but that's not because of it. I mean, if Xbox made good games, I would be an Xbox guy. Like, just as you, just before this conversation, I'm playing Fable Anniversary Edition on the PC that I got. I love Fable. I bought a 360 3 times to just play Fable. So, like, when we talk about being grounded, is I play a console for what the console's meant to be, and that's kind of the reason why, when it came time, I call myself the grounded gamer, because I was grounded, but also meaning grounded as in, like, I'm just situated. I'm just like, I've got that nice equal look. It's a level look of everything to an extent.
Yeah.
And the reason why there's no E is just because Twitter makes you have 13 characters, and I can copyright it. So that was
Uh,
pretty much the reason why I did that.
I really like that because, I mean, you hear all sorts of stories on this show behind names, but there's some real depth there, sir, behind yours. There's some real life experience lived. What I want to ask, and this is part of the reason I've been looking forward to having you on, is you aren't affected by the trophy curse. Well, I don't think you are. Perhaps you feel you are. But looking at your profile, you definitely, you play games, you play them for the story, for obviously as much as you want to play them and you move on. You're not trapped by them or whatever else, and this artificial bling, if you like many of the listenership is. But the other thing that interests me about you is because you did have that enforced break, which is just wonderful the way that it happened. I love that story. But you
Yeah.
had this enforced break. You and I are very similar in that I didn't, obviously I'm a lot older than you, but I didn't play for 15 years. I dabbled a little bit maybe in my 18, 19, 20, a long time ago on the whatever the PC was back then. And then I didn't play at all until my 30s. And I think having that break was really good because coming into it, it was exciting. I was enjoying it. I was also at a point in my life where I was a bit stable, I suppose, because gaming can be potentially expensive. It can be very time consuming. So I set myself up in other parts of my life first, which I think was really helpful for me. Do you think, and I know your break was obviously a lot earlier than mine, but why did you fall into it, I suppose, so hard again? Because it was a long enough break that you could have disappeared completely, I suppose.
I think it's because, like my mom told me the other day, like basically we were sitting there, and obviously with everything going on with COVID and stuff like that, you have a lot of time to think.
Mm.
And with having a lot of time to think, it's come to the point of me going, okay, well, what is it that I really want to do? Like, what do I really want to do? And my mom's always said, she says, you know what? Even though we grounded you when you were 5, I've always said the same thing. You're going to grow up to be in electronics, video games, or something in that industry because you've got such a strong pull to it that that's where you're going to go. So it's
Mm.
just going to happen. And that's where, really, when it came down to it, is video games have always been a thing for me of enjoyment. I did have some points in my life where, even after the point of going back into video games, where I did make the choice to like stop playing as much just because I found that there was negative ways of playing video games. And that's something that everybody should understand, is that you really got to understand why you're playing a video game. If you're playing a video game because you want to escape from something, and there are times where that's a good thing, but there's sometimes where like I would be playing a video game and I'm like, I'm just doing this so I don't have to focus on myself. I don't have to like be healthy. I don't have to like you know take the healthy route. I don't have to shower. I don't have to do. And when you get into that point, you have to pull yourself back, right? And that's the big thing, is
Yeah.
that there are points in my life where I've had those points as well, where I've stopped playing again. But I've always come back because it's something I really enjoy. It's a media that I really find is one of the best medias to let people express themselves. Movies are one thing, but movies are, here's a movie, you can't change how it is, you can't do anything different with it. It's just an experience. But the thing about gaming, and the thing I've always said about gaming is a different experience for everyone. My partner, she plays visual novels and RPGs. That's pretty much all she plays, which is something I could never do. But she's the completionist compared to me, where she's got more platinums than I do, and she's been gaming for on the PS4 and the Vita, and
Mm-hmm.
that's it. And she's got more platinums than I do, and that's because she's the person that when she plays a game, she's got 100% it. Like she just beat Persona 5, um, which I haven't even started yet, and
Mm.
she's like, okay, do I play Persona 5 again to go for the platinum on the original, or do I go into Royal and just go for the platinum in that? And she'll play, like, I think Persona 4 she's beat 3 or 4 times. Like she really has that drive to do that kind of stuff. Whereas for me, like you were saying, I just play it once and I kind of put it down. And it's because I'm there to enjoy it, and not, if I really enjoy a game a lot, I'll platinum it 100%. Like Control, I'm going for the platinum, but that's because I just like the game. And at some point I'll platinum it. Final Fantasy Remake, I'm going to platinum that at some point. You know, I find that for me, when it comes to the completion of a game, that, like everybody says, put your money where your mouth is. Mine is put my platinum where my mouth is. If I really want to say this is a great game, I've platinumed it. If the game's garbage, where I just I beat it and it's done, it's probably my games that I have 10% or 30% of trophies on. So there's always that way. And even on Xbox, I have my Xbox account. I don't even know if it's still active anymore. But like when I first played on the Xbox, I bought my first 360 in 2007, and I bought it with Fable 2, and I bought every single exclusive that wasn't on the PlayStation, like everything. Like I bought all the Naruto games that weren't on it. I bought all the Fight Night Round 3, the King Kong, like everything. Like I just went, okay, what's not on the PlayStation? And then I went, what's good achievements? Yeah, what's good achievements? Let's just buy all that too. And then so I bought all this stuff, and then I beat it. In 3 months. I gained like 20,000 achievement points, and I was like, okay, I'm done. Play Xbox, you go over here now. You're done. Go sit in your corner. And then the Wii, and like that's that's how it's always gone for me, and that's why it's so weird with this generation. This is the first generation where I haven't bought the Xbox, and it's not because I didn't want. I like even my partner. She's like, you're not going to own an Xbox, and I told her, I said, if Fable comes out for Xbox One, I'm going out and buying an Xbox One. Like, I actually worked for Future Shop, which is the Canadian version of Best Buy before it closed down, and in that Christmas that I worked there, they had a raffle, and depending on how much warranty plans you sold every day, you get a thing into the raffle. And I was the highest in the store for those. And I'm like, well, I already know I'm getting a PS4, so I'm not going to put my money into that. I don't want to put my money into an iPad because I'm just not a Mac guy. So I put all my points into the Xbox One. So I won a day one edition Xbox One on release date when they were completely sold out. So it's not like I didn't have the option to own an Xbox One. I've always had the option. I've just never, right? It's for me, and it's weird right now. Like I say, we do talk about Game Pass. We were just talking about before the show, and that's the big reason why this is a weird generation for me, because it's like, okay, well, now I have a PC that I just recently got. So every Xbox game that usually would come out for a console exclusive, I could just play it through PC and not have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Right? So that's where now I don't need to have that console to do that. And that's why it's so weird for me, because it's like, you know, if you give me a new Fable game, you give me a game that I don't want, I will buy your console for that one game. Yeah. But if it's not there, I'm not going to buy it. And that's why I've stuck mainly to PlayStation, is because I own the Switch and I play all the games that are exclusive to Switch. And, you know, I have all those games, and then I have my PlayStation. And that's why I stick mainly to PlayStation, is because a lot of the games that I like are on PlayStation. And it's just the way it is. I mean, if Xbox tomorrow had the new God of War, I'd go buy an Xbox.
Yeah. Look, of course. Of course, and I don't think anyone could ever argue the point that, I mean, if you've got a PC, the Xbox Series X, it's a hard sell. I mean, you know, the PS5, it has games, not many, like 2 or something, you know, Dark Souls, woohoo. But, you know, that's a remake, is it? Oh, sorry. Well, you know, it's still a game, I suppose. And, you know, you've got Astrobot. That's a lovely demo, isn't it, that they're whacking in there? And then Sackboy at, 100, oh my goodness, that's a lot of money for a Sackboy, isn't it? But, you know, there's a lot of choice there. As I understand on the Xbox, you know, there's really no choice, you know, with thousands of games on Game Pass. The Medium dropping one of the first true next-gen games the other week or whatever. So, but look, of course, you know, there's these things. Now, what I want to ask you about is that, because obviously a lot of people that come on this show, perhaps they don't shower, as you said, you know, often. Perhaps sometimes they eat, perhaps not. Some of them are very hardcore trophy hunters and gamers. And, you know, the numbers are always fascinating. And what I find interesting about you is that you've played 910 games. You've completed 18 of them. You have a wonderful completion percentage on the PlayStation of 21.33%. I'm impressed. We'll talk later about how I can achieve that myself. But this, and coming back to this point, and I know you've sort of already addressed it a bit, but you really do feel that you, like, is it fair to say you're just in for the story or whatever else, and you have no problem moving on from a game when you're finished? Or do you feel the pull to come back? Do you sort of return to these things or not?
Not really. Like I say, once a game's done for me, if I did not have the pull to it inside the game, I don't really feel the need to play it again. And even in some games, like the new Squadrons. I had a real hard time pulling myself to beat that game. If I wasn't part of the BeLegit, competition that I'm in to win, I would have just been like, okay, I'm halfway through the game, put it to the side. There's so many games that, thank God, PlayStation forgets the PS3 sometimes, uh, because if it counted every time I had zeros for games, or if I had, especially when my PS3 died because I had the old 60 gig, all the games that were like 50%ed on it, especially my old PS2 classics and all my PS2 games and all my PS1 games that I have 50%ed, my percentage would probably be around 1 to 2%. Um,
Mm.
but that's the
That's the
big thing. If I
mythical
don't like a
percentage.
game,
Yeah.
yeah, if it's something I just don't find interest in, or something like that, I just won't. I can't do like, I know nowadays it's all about like games with like service games, right? Like Division
Mm.
2, Destiny 2, Ghost Recon. A lot of these games now are becoming where they're like, here's your game, and then here's your seasons pass that gives you all this extra content. And for me, I'm like, is that content like back in the day? I love Borderlands. I beat Borderlands and all the DLCs when come out. But nowadays, when it comes to these newer games, I just don't feel there's enough of a need. It's the same thing over and over again, just different enemies, and I'm like, I'm not. There's no story there for me. It's kind of just like, here you
Mm.
go. Like I played the Ghost Recon Breakpoint. I beat the base story of that, and my nephew wanted to go through and beat the Terminator DLC. I'm like, okay, and the story is
Mm.
like, there are Terminators. Help me destroy Terminators. Oh, you found the reactor. Cool, you killed the reactor. Great, you destroyed Terminators. The only reason why I bought the gold pass was to play with my nephew. Like, there's just not enough interesting content in that, and to me, there's just not there's too many games that come out nowadays for me to take an extra 10 hours or an extra 4 hours, an extra 5 hours to play DLC that's just, you know, not really that good, or just the same thing over again with just different people. And, you know, that's why, like, Destiny 2 is a great example where I beat the original story. I played through the first expansion, and then I forgot about it. I just left it off. And then, like, my nephew and his buddies sank like 2,000 hours each into that game. And then I came back in at Fallen King when it was a new story, beat the story again, and then just, let it go again. And that's the big thing. Like, I don't feel the need to put these crazy amount of hours into games. I don't understand people that, like, my nephew's like that. I don't understand how he can do it. Like, the only game I've played a crazy amount of times is Earthbound. Earthbound is one of my favorite RPGs. I usually play that once every couple of years. I'll play through the entire thing of Earthbound, but that's just because I love the reliving that story experience. But that's the thing; it's a story experience, and that's where newer games now just don't have that. So
Yeah, no, of course, and I mean, I know there's a lot there you said maybe to unpack or something, but the thing that I suppose interests me the most, because looking at your profile, like, to be honest, Kory, your profile and mine are exactly the same, with the exception of like 1,500 rat plats. That's the only difference between us, I feel, because you're basically, you're not playing any of the trash. You're playing all the mainstream games really going through here, or in effect all of them on the PlayStation anyway. So I want to ask you then. It
yeah,
sounds like you're more story focused. We've sort of covered that, or you're more narrative focused, or whatever. How much does the gameplay loop then? The raw gameplay, does it matter to you? Because looking through, like, you're playing a bit of everything. You're playing shooters. You're playing RPGs. I mean, you've got your assassins here as well. You've got some JRPGs here as well. So are you sort of open to playing fighters as well? Any style of gameplay for the story?
oh, anything at all, I'll play for the story. Like, at the beginning, one of the first games I beat this year actually
Mm.
was Mortal Kombat X. And it's because I played Mortal Kombat 9, and it's funny because, like, Joe loves the Mortal Kombat series, and I know a lot of other people that are like heavy into fighting games, and they can't stand me playing fighting games because I'll play Mortal Kombat for the story, I'll play DOA for the story, I'll play Like, you know, the Dragon Ball Z fighters. I'll play them for the story, and I'm not bad at fighting games. Like, I'm actually good at them, and then I just stop.
Yeah.
And they're like, how can you sit there and play through the story of a fighting game and not want to play online? And like, Joe's always like, hey, download that game again, that fighting game again, so we can cheese the online trophies. I'm like, I'm okay. I can just stay off I've done what I need to do. And that's the big thing. There's not a single type of game I don't play. I play everything. And that's why when it comes down to it, like I've always said, if you ask me like 5 years ago what was the best racing game on any console, I would have told you it was Forza, because Forza is an amazing racing game, and I've played Forza and beat the story mode of Forza. And that's the big thing. That's the one thing a lot of people sometimes I think struggle with is sometimes we're so stuck on, I'm a huge JRPG lover, you know, and like Final Fantasy 15 for me is one of the ones where a lot of people are like, or Final Fantasy 14 actually is a better example. I love Final Fantasy 14. I beat the basic story, not the expansions. Once again, you know, like I said, I beat the story and then I put it down. Soft. I want to go back. But a lot of people I know are like, that's an MMO. I don't want to play it. And I tell them, that is one of the best Final Fantasy storylines out there. It is probably one of the combat in it is great, even though it's an MMO. And for some people, they just don't play those types of games because it's quote unquote an MMO, or quote unquote a racing game, or quote unquote a fighting game, or quote unquote a hack and slash. Like they just miss these great games.
Yeah. Because
they just don't want to try to play them. And it's sad because like Final Fantasy 14 is free. Everyone complains I have nothing to play. It's free. Make an account. Play it to level 60 in the first expansion. Free. I mean, yeah, you get a little bit of, you know, things you can't do on it, but you know, there are great games that sometimes people just don't touch because it's not their type of game. And I've always been one of those people that I may suck at certain games, like Gran Turismo. Love Gran Turismo. I suck at it. I am terrible at real sim racing games. Terrible. Arcade racers, fantastic.
Yeah.
Sim games, terrible.
I can totally understand that, because the funny thing is, like, I put it in perspective that I understand a lot of these big games have a learning curve as well. And it's the funniest thing because, you know, you talk to gamers, hardcore gamers, and they're like, oh, I love gaming because you could live, you know, 1,000 lives and 1,000 experiences. But fuck, I'm not going to play that thing over there, you know, because it's too long or whatever else. I don't know about it. And so it's all this juxtaposition, but also, you know, the fear of length of some of these games. And I know that 14 has a subscription, as you said, but there are many JRPGs or whatever that don't, you know, all the single player ones, you know, they're whatever, and you can, but then the common thing that I hear, and again we mix in different communities, I suppose, is that, you know, oh, I'm not gonna play that because it just takes too long. I've still got 100 hours to smash 1,000 rat plats this month, but you know, I'm not going to be playing this thing because it's just too long. And the ironic thing is, when you speak to so maybe the highest volume trophy hunters up the top of the boards, they are playing these games. It's the people in the middle or whatever, and you know, they're putting all their time in everywhere else, but it's this weird, I've never understood it, this weird juxtaposition. And one of the things in the last, you know, we haven't talked about this, listeners, in disclosure, but in the last month, or, you know, of January, I watched you beat a ton of games for the BeLegit, you know, side quest of Levi's there on the Facebook. You know, get involved if you wish to, listeners. Yeah. And it's sort of, because, you know, I've been changing my gaming a little bit lately, and I sort of, because I know you had a lot of time in January free, and, you know, so did I, because that's the time I take off for the year. And I don't always play a lot when I have a lot of time, and I'm not always very efficient. I seem to be much more efficient when I'm working with my playing or whatever. But I was like, I wonder how much time I'm wasting, not on these short games, but just doing, you know, meaningless stuff, as you were talking about, I suppose, for you know, just because you're stuck in the loop of potentially a trophy or whatever else. And I wonder how many games I could be beating, you know, like you did in that month, if I released the sort of pressure on that stuff and just stopped after the story. So recently, you know, I played Control, which, yes, you're going to get the platinum for basically by playing the story anyway. But, you know, after that, I played through the DLCs and just moved on. And it went from probably what would have been a 25-hour experience down to about a really really good 10 to 12 hour experience and I was on to the next thing. And I just think, I know for you this is probably obvious, but it's a real mental shift for someone who's used to just spending hours, as you say, just in there because that's what's expected, I suppose, in the game. And what my question I'm getting to here, sir, is that whenever I express this opinion, especially when you start talking games, they go, "Oh, well, CJ's full of shit because he's only played the game for 5 hours, or he rushed through the story. He hasn't experienced everything else. How could you possibly have a valid opinion on the game?" And so that's what I want to ask you. You've clearly finished the stories in these games, but why is your opinion valid if you're not, partaking in all this other stuff?
Well, that's the big thing. I'm not one of those people that just rush the story either. Like, that's the sad thing is I have, as I like to call it, some people call it ADHD. I call it, look, there's a cave over there. Um,
The bright
so
shiny.
when I play these games, yeah, when I play these games, a lot of the time I do like Control. I think I beat the game at 26 hours. So I know the how long to beat says 11 hours is the how long it's supposed to take to beat this game, but I put 26 hours in before I beat it, and that's because by the time I was almost done, like the game was over. Like I pretty much did everything.
Mm.
So it's one of those things where it's so for me like yes, there are games I feel you can run through and just play the story and you can understand the game and what the game wants to do and where the game wants to go. Some games, though, sadly, they make it where the side quests need to be done, and a lot of that extra stuff needs to be done to really, I think, fully experience games. And the problem is that the game itself doesn't really. Since the trophies and achievements have started to be a thing, they've kind of let the trophies and achievements kind of be like the thing that guides people to do the full story.
Yes.
Like I know you and me both played Miles Morales,
Mm.
and I know you went through I think your initial view of it, you went right through the story and beat the game, and you're like, okay, I beat it. And
Mm.
then, like, that is one of those games where if you don't go for that platinum or like do all the side stuff, that game is terrible. 100%. That a game is not worth just the basic storyline of going A to B. That game is not a good game.
No, it's
If
definitely.
you do all the side stuff where it opens up the character development, where it opens up all these side characters, like they could have made all those quests be main missions. I would have thought it was a main mission game. I would have just done it
Mm.
either way because I think that's something that should have been a main mission. But the problem is that games nowadays, they're like, okay, well, here's this tiny experience, here's these games to play, and I know there's this side stuff over here. We're just gonna let you skip past that if you want, but really, that's a lot of the time what makes the game interesting. Like Borderlands One, we just beat, and I'm like, why did I love this game so much? Because this game's just hard, it's grindy, it's not that good. And then I remember, okay, well, the first time I played it, did everything. So you see the Lord of the Rings memes, you see the Teenage Mutant Ninja
Mm.
Turtle memes. There's and it's all the side quests. That's what everybody remembers from
Yes.
Borderlands. The first Borderlands is all the side quests, all the cool little nods in the side quests. If you don't do any side quests in Borderlands One's a pretty basic and boring game. I mean, it's fun, but it's not great. And that's the big thing is that I think every game itself has to have the way to know it. But that's the problem is there's not enough games out nowadays that really tell you that. Um, that really there's not enough games that really just have a good story in general, which is let's be honest, the big thing nowadays. A lot of
Mm.
new games that come out are terrible stories, and I think that's where
Yeah.
a game that is on my higher rated list of like you need to play this game is a game that if you were to just beeline from A to B on the story, just the main missions, that game should grip you. It should like you should know everything and it should do everything. Like Ghost of Tsushima, one of the best games for that. That game is by far probably my best game all year for the A to B of here's a world, here's a story. You can go A to B and not feel like you missed a lot.
Mm.
Now, yes, you can go find the shiny things. That's why it takes so long. But that's a great game. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things where I think that's where the games are running into issues now where like with Cyberpunk and The Witcher, where really to fully experience those games, you have to do side quests.
Yes.
And the problem is that a lot of people just want to beat the game, and then they beat the game and they're like, this is a terrible game. And I'm like, I mean, it's terrible if you just go from A to B, but if you do the side quest, it's great. But once again, it's, if a person's not used to doing that, they're not going to get the full experience of the game. And I think that's where you have to really know the person you're talking to recommend things, because like Joe, I know you're going to have Joe on the show at some point here in the next little while. And Joe made a like, I know you've been watching. Joe's been one of the avid trophy hunters that I've known in my life. And in the 5 years that I've known Joe, I've watched him. It finally hit him last year. He's like, Kory, I might start doing what you're doing. I'm like, what do you mean, Joe? He says, well, I find that I always have that goal. Joe's goal is always to hit 50% of a trophy list on a game before he puts it aside. That's his goal. If he beats a game, he has to get 50%. And I've seen him sit there and play absolute garbage games for so long, like an extra 4 to 5 hours to get one trophy to make that 50% that he set himself up for. And I'm like, Joe, you realize that 4 to 5 hours, you could have played this game, you could have played this game, you could have played this game. And he's like, he's like, why am I putting myself through all this pain to play a shitty game that I don't like? If I didn't like it, just stop. And so now he's finally done that. And he's, man, like, I think his goal this year is to do 100 games. That's his goal this year, is to beat 100 games this year. So, you know, it's crazy to see that, where he's even started changing to that. You know, just, there's so many games that come out nowadays. You can't just sit there and sit on one. Some people, like, I know some people that just sit on Division 2 for like 2,000 hours.
Yes.
And then they, you know, they try to tell people what to. Yeah. So it's just, you know, it's one of those things where you've got to try everything, especially right now when, you know, there's so many good games. Like I just saw, like, what was it? The Switch came out with their announcement for all the remakes we got coming out on the Direct there. And then PlayStation just showed like 6 new games that are coming out within the next couple months. And it's like indie games. It's like Kill It With Fire. They just dropped a trailer. I guess it's been out on computer for however long, but I've never really cared. So it's a game where you just kill spiders with rocket launchers and flamethrowers. And I'm like, cool, I'll probably buy that and play it. 100% I'll play that just because I want to enjoy it. And there's so many games where if you just play the same thing, or sometimes if you're just racing through it, you don't take the time to appreciate it, you're never going to appreciate it.
Yeah.
I think that's the big thing, right?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's a really fine line, because, you know, obviously, you know, Joe there, you know, he's made a decision or whatever, which I think is great, and I look forward to exploring that with him and his mindset behind that. And there is definitely a place for both sides. You know, I'm not advocating, you know, trophies or whatever, because the funny thing is, as we wrap up this project, this is going to free up a lot of my time. And, you know, I've had a few people go, oh, you know, you're going to quit, or you're going to do whatever. And to be honest with you, if anything, I think I'm going to double down. And I'm going to go for even more trophies, if that's even fucking possible, just to see, because in this last 4 years, I've never done what a lot of these high volume players have done, and just fucked everything off and just played, you know, and because I've always had little projects or done these things. And while this is really awesome, it's time consuming, and it affects the way you play as well. As you say, you know, you perhaps play longer in certain games than perhaps you would have, or whatever else. But, you know, it does put you, and, you know, perhaps you and I are in a unique position of playing so many of the new titles, which, you know, it's not available to everyone. It's expensive, it's time consuming, or whatever else. So I totally understand all sides of it. But what I find interesting is Hakum was on a few weeks ago, and he said, in a slightly different vein, we were talking about when games come out broken. And I see here, this is the game that I want to talk about in a moment here, this PS5. Now, I haven't played this, so I don't know if it is or not, but the, what's it called? Godfall. Here, I want to ask you about this in a minute, and we're talking about whether games, you know, they need to be, they can be fixed, you know, in patched, as they definitely can. We've seen that with Ubi games, you know, Division, all these things, you know, not Anthem perhaps, but a lot of games have improved over time. And he said the problem is if you don't fix it straight away, it's too late. And at the time I was like, well, that's, you know, fine for you know, maybe you, Kory, and maybe me that's playing the newest thing all the time. But, you know, for the majority of people, they'll come to stuff later. But the truth behind that is that, yeah, maybe for AAA it's okay, but as you say, there's so many games coming out across systems that these indie games, if they're not played in the first few weeks, people do forget about them and they disappear on the store. They disappear in everyone's mind, particularly if they never get a physical release, and they never will be played. And trying to find this balance, I suppose, of these games, and some of them are really awesome that do just disappear. I don't know. I don't know where it is. It's an interesting one, but let's not dwell on that. I did mention Godfall, so I do want to ask you, you've got the PS5, you're in the next generation, you're firmly planted in the Sony pony enclosure over there. It's wonderful to see. How are you finding one of their flagship games they released in this Godfall?
Oh, well, 100%. Like I've told people before, even Joe, um, when people ask me, why did you buy a PS5? My first response is always, because it plays my PS4 games better. I didn't buy a PS5 to always play the flagship games and that. I just buy it because the amount of benefits that I have playing my PS4 games um is through the roof. Like the idea that I can sit there and like especially right now when I'm doing this competition, I'm constantly deleting games and downloading games constantly. Now on the old PS4, if I tried to download a game and play Division with Joe, or I try to play an online game with Joe, my PlayStation 4 is going to tell me that it's going to take 6 years to download a game. Whereas with the PS5, it's just like, cool. I have games done in 5 minutes now. It's like, oh, it's a 32 gig game. Okay, cool. I'll download that in 5 minutes while I play something else. There's so many benefits, especially for me moving into the rain. Like I told you before, with JKGaminNstuff, we're looking at going into streaming YouTube videos and all that. And the PS5 especially is a huge step up from the PS4 in integrated streaming. We have a camera that we can move anywhere. Once you get the PlayStation Cam, the chat actually shows up on the TV screen. Now, the Twitch chat doesn't see that on their end. I just see it on my end of it actually showing up, and it actually goes. I can choose where it goes, and it goes up on the left side, and it shows you the people chatting, so you can read it as a person that's actually doing Twitch. So it's a lot more integrated. You don't get that stupid gray bar that sits on the side like you did before on the PS4 for streaming. And there's so many other advantages that way. Like, yes, 100%. The PS5 launch games and the games that are out right now are mostly garbage or the remakes. A lot of the games that the best things I've loved about the PS5 and like even the Xbox Series X is we're getting now these patches that make the old games that I love better. So, the remastered Spider-Man. Yeah, I know it's not new, but I played through the entire game again, and I had to because my save got deleted. But I played through it the entire thing again from start to finish, and I loved it, and it's because it's a game I loved. And same with like Ghost has got a 60 frames per second upgrade, and there's certain games that just look better. And I play on 1080. I don't have a 4K TV. I bought a PS5, so I couldn't afford the 4K TV.
That's right.
So like just to give you an example, like I have my list up here of all the games I've beaten. Like for example, in January we got Shadows of Tomb Raider as our PS Plus game, and they gave us Rise of Tomb Raider before. So I was like, well, before I play Shadows, I'm gonna go play Rise. So I just downloaded Rise, beat that in a day and a half, and then beat Shadows the next day. Other things like Skyrim. Once again, the loading times are atrocious in Skyrim on a base PS4. On PS5, I can fast travel, even though it's not on my external. It's not in my internal. It's on my external. It's still super fast. So like when I look at like a lot of the games that I did beat, there's so many games that are just better on the PS4, and I'm one of those people where you could be like, oh, but this is 4K or this is 8K and it runs at 120 frames per second. Like people, especially when I was looking at buying a PC, and everyone's like, no, you gotta buy this with this chip and this graphic card and this drivers and all this other garbage because oh well, you can't play games on PC at 30 frames per second. That's not allowed. That's not allowed to play 30 frames per second
Yeah.
on a PC. You have to play at 60 frames per second.
Yeah.
You have to play on the highest graphics possible. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm there for the story. I'm there for the gameplay. And so if I have to play the game at 30 frames per second, I'll do it. That's the big thing. So
Yeah.
that's the big thing where, like I say, with the PS5, I'm not like, oh, I need like Godfall is beautiful. Ray tracing really screwed it up when it first released. For those that didn't play it, basically there was a way to go into shadow mode, which dimmed the screen down and then you could see things. And then when the screen brightened back up, because of ray tracing, everything's metal coated. So as soon as the light would brighten, it would hit everything, and then it would just infinitely reflect the light, and then you'd go blind. So, like, Godfall was a broken game. 100% Godfall was a broken game on release. And like I said, for me, if I was buying games for exclusives, I would have bought neither console. I would have went with the Switch, which I have. But that's why, like, the games I'm excited for are actually the collections, like the Neo collection that just came out, remastered for PS5. Can't wait to play that. 60 frames per second, 1080, you know, the games, runs faster, all that stuff. Like, that's what I want to play. You know, yeah, I'm excited for Ratchet and Clank whenever it comes out, God of War whenever that comes out, you know, all these exclusives whenever they come out. But there are, like you say yourself, indie games are really, in all honesty, where to play. Recently, since I got the PC now, I've been playing Helm, or whatever, the new Viking simulator that's just
Everybody
blowing up
talks
on.
about this. Yeah.
Yeah, so the new Viking simulator.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm not a huge survival guy player. Like, I like the games like that. I just can't sink time into it because I find that they're too hard, or they're just too pain. You don't feel like you're getting anywhere.
Yeah.
Whereas this one you do. So it kind of gets you where it's that sad experience where me and my buddies are sitting there and we're like, we go to this swamp area and we're like, we're going out and we're like, oh my God, we found iron. Well, now we can make iron gear. So now we're like, oh, we got to make iron before we go to bed. You know, 2 o'clock in the morning later. We're like, oh, okay, well, yeah, we're still making iron. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. We should probably go to bed. Buddy works at like 6. So it's, you know, it's one of those things. It's a great game. But then my one buddy said a funny thing. He says, it blows my mind that we have companies like Bethesda, who's been just re-releasing Skyrim to the point, and then we have a game like this that's made by 3 people in their basement. You know, and it's got lore, it's got a story, and it's got all that. And that's the crazy thing, is it's got lore, it's got story, it's got a story mode. Like a lot of people don't. It's not just a sim. There's actually a story mode. There's actually some reason why you're here, and it's the like, I'm surprised the building mechanics are not broken. Like, there's so many things. Like, I played Minecraft in beta and alpha, and I remember how buggy that was when it was in those. You get stuck in lava forever, you drown forever, and, you know, like, there was so many bugs when you first played that game. And this game, I'm like, there's no way this is an alpha.
Yeah.
This can't be alpha. Like, the idea that this game is early access, supposedly an alpha, blows my mind. And it's by 3 people. And that's the thing, is that there are games coming out now faster and better than a lot of the AAA titles out there. And that's the big thing that I think people really need to look at. And like you were saying yourself, so many of those games just disappear off the store or disappear down the list because not enough people buy them day one or play them day one. And people like I don't know if you've ever had Andy from Dual Screens on the show.
I know who you mean.
Yeah, so, like, I send him all the time. Like, every time there's a new indie game out, I'm like, hey, there's this game where you're a cameraman that has to find out what the squirrels are hiding. We need to buy this game. Like, those are the types of games I love. Like, I'm one of those people that will play the most weirdest games ever just because I'm like, I need to know.
You need to know what happens. Yeah.
I need to know what happens because someone in their basement came up with an idea on just this random game idea, and I'm like, that's what we need right now. I mean, you know what, Valhalla from Ubisoft is great. Assassin's Creed Valhalla is a great game, but it's just another Assassin's Creed game. It's just like Odyssey, just in a different setting, whatever. Like it's better looking, okay, it's newer combat, what it's still the same game. It's still all the same. The story's a little different, is obviously different, but all Assassin's Creed games somewhat play the same to an extent. And that's the big thing is that, you know, when we have games that are coming out that are completely different, like um there's some games that are even like rat plats. There's a lot of rat plats that are really good. Like one of the ones I
Mm.
what was it, Cat-tacular Damage? No, what the heck was that game called?
Oh
Cat
yes, yeah,
Lateral Damage.
that was an older one. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I platinumed that. I love that game, but I played it because I loved it. I didn't play it to get. I didn't buy it because I wanted the platinum. I bought it because I liked it. I'm probably one of the only people that says I actually like I Am Mayo as a game. You know, I don't just buy it for the platinum. I buy it because I actually like the game, and that's the thing is that there's these games that have great ideas and great stories, or just, but the problem is they have to like either cheese themselves as a rat plat to be in that bubble where people actually buy it, or they have to, you know, have this publicity that somehow they get. Like we look at all the games that are coming out, have come out in the last however many years that have made big waves in the industry. Among Us, you know, Undertale, you know, Valheim, like these games are all indie games made by
Yeah.
3 or 4
Yeah.
people, or sometimes even one. Five Nights at Freddy's, another big game that made by one guy, and the story and lore on that is insane. And that's what people need to understand is that, you know, I'm to the same point as my buddy said, is that we're getting tired of the same company. Like he's like, if Bethesda comes out with their new game and it's the same engine as Skyrim, he's like, I'm just gonna throw my hands up and not even buy it, because it's like they need to start putting effort. If one person's gonna outdo your game, or 3 people in a basement are gonna outdo your game, based on the idea that they're doing it with not the technology you have, they don't have the money you have, they don't have all this stuff they have, but they're building with passion. And I think that's the big thing, is that games made with passion will always, always, always perform better than a game made by the train of let's get it done,
Yeah.
let's do it, right?
I think there's. I mean, it's wonderful to hear you talk so passionately about the indies as well. And I mean, there's one of the things that I think, a lot of people don't factor in when they talk about small teams is that it's very hands on. When you're talking about your massive open world games and your massive companies, you've got to remember there are so many hands involved that the passion is a different thing. It's a teamwork. It's working in a team to create a thing. You
Yeah.
may literally be working on one small segment, a tree, or something in the game, or set of trees. Like it's not the same as the indie. And I agree with you. I think indies are interesting because often the game is not right. It's not complete. Like the concept could be really good, as you've said. You really like the loop, or you really like the story, and or whatever else. And it's wonderful to play because you don't know what's going to happen. Whereas you play your Assassin's Creed, you know what's going to happen. You're heading to that piece of Eden. It's what happens in every game. You know you're going to play your Division 2. You're heading to the Mega Boss. All these games, they follow the same loop. So I definitely do understand that, but one of the things I think that's interesting, and to use a current example, Hybroxia 2, the Lilimo game with the Colin Moriarty backing or whatever. Now, that is by no means a great game. Like, I don't care, what people say, but it's not a bad game, and I really enjoyed it. But what's important is it is so much better than the first one. And so I'm more than happy to buy multiple copies or whatever, because it's only very cheap, to help them, because I would really like a third one, because if they keep improving the way they have, the third one is going to be sensational, and the second one is really good to play, but it's getting so much better. And I think that's what you see, not with all indie devs. Some get, they're hit and miss, but by and large, usually their work improves, but it's only being able to improve if people buy the products or whatever, as you sort of say. And
Oh, exactly.
that's the catch, because all your AAAs are going to be very well bought. I mean, look at Cyberpunk. How many people have a copy of that game, including me, sitting on the shelf, not going to play till the Series X or PS5 patch comes later in the year? So why the fuck did I waste $100 or whatever I did on it? I could have bought 20 indie games for that price, or probably could have bought half the Steam library with that. But it's that mentality, and these big companies will always rake the money out of the top. But if you said that to someone on an indie game, or look, buy it now and you can play it in 9 months' time, they're not going to do that.
No, exactly. And that's like Cyberpunk I loved on, like, I will admit I played it on my PS5, and I think that's the only saving grace I have, is playing the PS4 version on my PS5 made it so I didn't have as many issues as people on base PS4s. I still sunk. I think
Mm.
I'm at 96 hours in that game. And I've got 2 full characters, but I am looking at the point of when the PS5 version begins, I want to go back into that world and play that game. And that's exactly the truth. Is that the big thing is that if an indie company gets, I find it's interesting. Like we look at it, one of the greatest examples I always have is I find indie companies or indie developers always have those big dreams. Sometimes they get a little too big. Like a lot of people don't know, like Hello Games, they start out making Joe Danger. And for those who don't know, Joe Danger was like a really weird stunt bike game made on the PlayStation 3 where you just did flips and spins and collected the word Joe Danger. And they were great games. Don't get me wrong. And they were both PS Plus games, and I think that's where they got the people to invest in buy them and stuff like that. And they were lucky that they were able to have that. And I think that's why when No Man's Sky came out and everyone's like, "Oh man, this if they do exactly what they said, it's going to be this great game." And to me, I was going, "Okay, I know you guys are really wanting No Man's Sky to be really amazing and good, but they made Joe Danger. So like I don't know if you see the similarities because there is none. They're promising you a lot because that's what they're hoping on having. That's their dream. That's their passion. And you know what? Whenever they do passion projects, I think it's great. And like today's No Man's Sky compared to release day No Man's Sky is night and day. I wouldn't even think it's the same game. But that's where, in the end, if gamers and if all the gamers in the world or all the people behind these ideas on these great games had infinite money and infinite time to make what they want, they would all be amazing games to an extent. And I think that's where the big thing comes in is that if you really want to see these games get better, and especially indie developers to make a sequel to a game, like Cyber Shadow, what a great game made by the guys that made Shovel Knight. Shovel Knight was also a great game, but now if Shovel Knight never sold that many copies, would we see Cyber Shadow? Probably not. And that's where, you know, we really need. The sad thing is that's why I say just because a game's got some flaws and just because a game's, got some issues, you have to give credit where credit is due to every game company, not just indies, but also AAAs as well. And I'm not, trying to like, I know a lot of people are like, I'm one of the biggest people where I have people fight with me all the time about Cyberpunk. And they're like, Cyberpunk, it's, they should have had the time, they should have had the money. And I'm like, look, they're the only company that's made a brand new engine in 6 years for a game to an extent other than indie companies. And, yeah, they promised a lot. They overpromised. They didn't do it their job 100%. Witcher 3 wasn't that great on release either, for those who remember. But
That's right.
the big thing is that if you just, you know what, you don't have to support them now. Hopefully it'll be fixed. It'll probably be in the next No Man's Sky, where in 4 years we're not even going to remember this coming out, and Cyberpunk's going to be like, oh, this is the greatest game ever. And like you said yourself, a lot of people don't own PS5s right now. And so a lot of these games, the only saving grace with games like Godfall and, Demon Souls and a lot of these PS5 exclusives, and same with Xbox Series X games as well. The positive side with all of them is that they get that second life window, which a lot of games won't get, where when the next big wave of PS5s come out, everyone's going to go, oh, I'm going to go buy Godfall now because it's a PS5 only game. But now they get the fixed version. They don't get the shitty version that I had. They get the fixed version of the game, and they're gonna be like, "This is great. What's everyone talking about this game being shit?" No, it's because that's the way it is. It's the same idea as if you ever look at any game that's ever been made, like you said yourself. There's a lot of game companies that come up with games. You know what? They're not very good, but if they sell enough copies of it, when they're able to make that second one or that third one, that's really when a game really shines. Like Assassin's Creed's sadly a great example of that. Assassin's Creed 1 was not a good game. It was not good. I don't It had good mechanics. The ideas were great, but it was not a good game. If someone's going to try to tell me that Assassin's Creed, the original game, was good, no. It was okay, but it sold just enough to make the Ezio collection. And the Ezio collection, still to this day, is, I think, one of the best part of Assassin's Creed that Ubisoft has ever made, because it was so story-driven and it actually made sense. They went into history, they did their homework, they did what they needed to do, and it worked. And Assassin's Creed's 2 Brotherhood storyline and all that stuff is so good. And if we didn't give them the time of day with the first game, we would have never seen the second game. Now, Assassin's Creed 3 was all garbage because they just, their bridges got, that's the thing. You give them too much money, then they get greedy and they pop out something like Assassin's Creed 3 in Unity. But that's the big thing, is I think we really need to just focus on, if you really want to support, look at the developer to support, not just the game. We've got to start looking at more of a developer, what the developer's saying. If a developer like Cyberpunk, yes, they lied to us, they didn't do right. That's 100%. You have 100% reason to not give them your money and not support them in the future. But like certain indie companies, you know what? They don't have the technology. They don't have what they need to make these great games. And so when they say, look, we're doing our best, believe in them. Throw them some money. Like you said yourself, like Joe, every time Shovel Knight comes on something, he buys it. I kid you not, if tomorrow they came out on the mobile phone, he would probably buy it for mobile, even though he doesn't play mobile games, just to support them as a developer. And that's the big thing, is it's always to that point where, you just got to look at trying to do the best you can and, talk to these developers and help them get through. And I think we're coming to an age now where I'm more excited for the AA and the indie scene than I am the actual AAA. I'm more excited for those games than I am the AAA. Let's be honest. I mean, Ratchet and Clank, is it going to be good? Probably. It's just going to be like Ratchet and Clank. I love Ratchet. I know going into that, it's going to be the same thing as every other Ratchet and Clank game. Same with God of War. Is it going to be good? Is it going to be a story? Great. It's going to be just like the other God of War. Same with Horizon Zero Dawn. It's going to be the same. And that's why I'm going to like it. But, I want somebody to come up with a new idea. Someone give me something that's like new. Like Hotline Miami, one of my favorite games. Hard as ever, but such a good game. There's all these good games that we just need to help support so that they can make a second one or a third one. And like all these new, like Hades, what a great game. Like there's just games that need to be supported more than they are. And I think that's where we need to start looking at, what people are saying, and just, you don't have to, like, everything doesn't have to be a 10 out of 10 to play it. Even a 2 out of 10 should be played at least once.
That's right. Well, some of those are the best games, I feel. But yeah, I mean, it's very
exactly.
well. It's very well said, Kory. I mean, I don't want to go down this track, but I'm always mystified. Be independent film, games, music, whatever. You're like any sort of fringe content creators. Often, people don't realize how close to the edge a lot of these people are, in their creation or whatever. And eventually they just stop and they just, join mainstream society because they want a house, they want to live, they want a holiday. And often, we often hear about these things about, I'm not going to support that, whatever else, like, it's too expensive or it's too this or it's too that. And then you don't realize that until it's gone what you've lost. And I think that's, or that you did perhaps enjoy it. And I mean, that's all tied up in another thing. But I want to come back just briefly to another thing you mentioned there about the speed of the PS5, and similar obviously for the Xbox Series X. And having played Control recently, obviously I'm sure, I don't know if you ever played it on PS4. It was a wonderful experience on the Series X. So I'm sure for PS5 beautiful, 60 frames per second or whatever. But I've played that. I've been playing Assassin. I've been playing all these sorts of things. And yes, I've noticed the speed is better, but ironically, and I know you mentioned this earlier about the older games, it wasn't until I started playing some Sword Art Online, the Fatal Bullet from a few years ago, and even more recently this Atelier Ryza game from last year, games made for the old systems. And these are, JRPGs, admittedly, that have, loading screens. We're very familiar with this, sir. And of course, the loading screen has information, backstory, interesting things or whatever. The speed is so quick now that screen disappears in like 2 seconds. I can't read anything. And that, I think, is a great way to sort of put in context the speed of these systems, isn't it? I don't know if you've found that in anything you've played.
Yeah, no, Oh, it's because right now the way it works is like me, Joe, my nephew, and my other buddy, we all like played
Mm.
Borderlands together. And the ongoing joke was, okay, Joe, you go start the game because you've got your PS4. By the time you invite us and then load up the game, we'll be there waiting for you. And it was always those things where it's like we played Borderlands together, and even though we're all still playing a PS4 game, we'd all load in and it'd be like, okay, guys, we got to kill this guy in front of us. They're like, I'm still seeing the loading screen. I'm like, oh yeah, right, you don't have a PS5.
Yeah.
And I mean, I kid you not, like we look at these times, it's funny now because I don't think we've ever seen this happen on console where technically, like with speed running especially, usually the rule of thumb is that you have to play the game on either an emulated version or something like that. But now with all these new things coming out, if I was to speed run a game on PS5 compared to PS4, like Joe was talking about with Miles Morales,
Mm. Mm.
where the way Miles Morales works is if you have the PS5 version of the game or the PS4 version of the game, it hides the loading screens inside the cinematics.
Mm.
And a lot of people don't know this. So if you try to skip a scene, you can only skip it. There's a certain point in the scene that lets you skip because it's loaded the rest of the game.
Mm.
With the PS5, it instantly does that. You can just warp really fast. Or even if I play the PS4 version, it's still faster. But if you're trying to speed run it or like run it all like that, the experience is so different from PS4 to PS5 on half these games, where playing them again just for speed wise, just for like the 60 frames per second, the only game I will be 100% honest, the only game I've had issues with on my PS5 is I have Immortals, whatever it is, Phoenix Immortals or whatever it is,
Rising. Yeah.
Phoenix Rising. Great game, great game. I put it into I've been playing all my games on quality mode. I don't play on performance usually. I just play on quality.
Mm-hmm.
Except that game started in performance, and I'm like, oh, this looks really good. Then I put it into quality mode. That game chugged and looked absolutely terrible. It is one of the only games I've played on my PS5 so far that I'm like, I don't like this. I don't like the quality. I don't like the ray tracing and everything else in this. It looks bad. Like I'm okay with accepting 30 frames per second, but if you're going to give me 20 frames per second on a quality mode, like there's some issues there. But that's where, once again, it all depends on what you're playing and how you're playing it. And it to me, it's just, if I'm like Joe pops on, he says, hey, let's play a game. Like the UI on the PS5 is so much easier to just join games. I don't like the way the trophies are. The trophy menu is stupid. It's the stupidest thing on it. It's the one thing I don't like, but it's so easy to just like, if I want to invite the party to a game, I just go invite. It automatically brings up the party chat. I click who I want in the party chat, send the invite. It's done. It's quick and easy. I have like voice to text on my controller. Like not having to wear a headset all the time and being able to chat with everyone through my controller. Like these are the advantages that I bought a PS5 for. Not, hey, look, I get the new PS5 games. I don't really care. It's, like I'm probably not going to buy every PS5 game day one, but there's just so many things that I like about it. And that's the big thing. It's I don't know, like, and everybody that's on a PC is like, well, I got that PC day one. I've had that for like 4 years, and I'm like, yeah, but you also didn't have the problem like I did, where I was trying to set up my capture card for my streaming, and the sound capture program overrid my drivers for my sound on my computer, and I had no sound going through my computer, and I had to reinstall all the drivers on it. So when me and Joe make jokes about PCs and your drivers and your boot drives and your whatever, it's the same BS. It's taken me so long to just set up anything to play games, and that's the big thing. Consoles have always been that way, and the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, because I know you've kind of gone a lot harder into the Xbox Series X, and like I have to commend that the Xbox Series X, there's a lot of things that make it, like the way the backwards the what is it, the Xbox Ready or whatever it is, I can't remember what they called it, but the way that works compared to the PS5, I do wish some games I wish some PS5 games just did that. instead of doing the way the PlayStation's doing it.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's benefits to everything, but
Oh, of
you
course.
know,
Of
I
course.
will admit this is the first console generation where I've turned on the console and I'm like, I'm fine with playing older games on this. It makes it better.
Yeah.
Whereas every other console, there was never really a drive to play your old games on it because it was like it doesn't really work. Like PS Now, it's like, oh well, hey, guess what? You want to play PS3 games? PS Now, oh, that's garbage, absolute garbage. PS3, well, you had to buy the most expensive version to play PS2 and PS1,
Mm.
and so this is the first generation where it was like, pop on my PS5. It's like, oh, do you want to transfer your saves from your PS4? Yes, push a button. Okay, turn on your PS4. Turned on my PS4. Transferring saves. Done. Take your external right out of your PS4, plug it in the back of the PS5. All your games are automatically working. I don't have to re-download anything. I don't have to do anything. Done.
Mm.
Now I'm playing my PS4, but just on a PS5, and that is what I love about this generation.
Yeah.
This is the best part about the Xbox Series X and the PS4 generation, is that it's just, we're able to play the games we were already playing and love. And the best part about that is, like you said yourself, when there's so many good indie games, there's so many good smaller games that don't cost a lot of money to buy on these consoles, the PS4. You put out $700, you just get to keep your library of games and continue playing. So you're not having to worry about, oh, great, I have a brand new $700 console that can play 3 games. Like if I had to
Yes.
only be able to play PS5 games, holy crap, I would hate myself right now. I'd be like, cool, I can play Godfall Broken and
Yeah.
okay, Doom and Souls, that's cool. Astrobot was good. Sackboy, that's a little expensive.
Mm.
You know, the All Star Destruction, it's okay. It needs some work, but it's okay.
Yeah.
And I get control, but like that's it. Whereas, you know, I get to play my own games. That's what makes it so good.
Yeah, no, look, of course, and I mean,
So
it's the beginning of the thing, you know, as you say with ray tracing, that's going to get better. I mean, that is no better on the Series X. The port on Control was not a great port. I mean, it has similar problems. It's unplayable almost in that mode, you know, to a degree. But on the 60 frames per second, it's fine. But it's funny because JT, who we both know, he sort of sent me a message this week, and he's like, you know, I can only play the Series X now, and I know he's playing everything, but he's like, you know, he goes, I see you're playing the PlayStation, you know, you've gone back to it a bit. He said, I just can't do it. I can't do it after playing the X. And like, I totally understand where he's coming from. And of course, you know, there's so many JRPGs on the PlayStation, so that's a drawing card. But something I'd consider, you know, urge listeners to consider, and this is something I did in the middle of the year, Corey, because I wasn't convinced in this wonderful first world country without Facebook, we would even be able to get a PlayStation 5 or a Series X. And so I decided to
yeah.
upgrade to TV. And I've never spent a lot on monitors before or TVs or anything, and I really decided to treat myself and buy the LG CX. Now, you know,
Oh yeah, that's what I want.
yeah, and you
That
know,
thing's so
it is,
beautiful.
because the funny thing is, like, you know, and at the time, like, I remember going in and, you know, because I don't buy stuff of that value usually, well, not a TV, that's for sure. And the saleswoman was there, and it was during the week or something, and she goes, "Oh, it must be nice for some people." And I was like, "Oh, fuck, you know, I'm finally a person, you know, like I'll just bring out the black Amex or something." But you know,
Yeah.
but that aside, the reason I bring it up is, yes, you're spending 700 on the consoles too, and yes, this is a little more, but part of the reason I'm enjoying going back to the PlayStation 4, you know, and as we said today, you're playing a lot of old games, even on the new system. The picture quality and the HDR is so sensational on those things that I almost wonder if I'm enjoying that more than I'm enjoying the Xbox Series X. And it does blur the lines for how good the system really is when you're running on a good display. So just to throw that in the mix, listeners, you know, if you can't get the PS5, perhaps, you know, maybe at least for a year until, as you say, there's more games, Corey, and things like this, perhaps even an upgrade to a monitor. And these things are coming down in price all the time. Like I was looking the other day, they're dropping all the time. It could be a way to go. I don't know.
Well, that's the big thing, right? Like, for me, I'm still playing on a TV I bought in 2015, 2016, something like that. But it was a really, at the time, it
Mm.
was the top of the line LG IPS, you know, 120 hertz. Is basically the non OLED version of the
Mm.
CX. And so when I put these games into ray tracing mode and quality mode and stuff, there's such a big difference in quality difference, even just on a 1080 screen. And that's something
Mm.
that sadly with a lot of people don't understand is when we talk about PC players and stuff like that, and they always talk about how the quality looks so good and it looks like this and it looks like that. The reason why it looks like that is because usually you spend half that price on a monitor as well.
Yes.
Whereas sadly, console gamers, they're like, yeah, let's buy this 70-inch TV. And then they just buy the $700 70-inch TV, but it looks like garbage.
Yeah.
And the big thing is, too, is like you said yourself, the one reason why I've liked the PlayStation, and and like I said, Xbox Series X and PlayStation both have their own ways of doing these new upgrades.
Yes.
And I know Xbox has got the smart delivery, which is basically the same way as a PC does it, where it just goes, hey, medium graphic settings, let's change those to high. There you go. Push a ray tracing button, it does it. Whereas because the PlayStation isn't doing that and they have to make full different versions of these games, I'm finding that when I have like there's the PS4 Pro version of most of these games. So like Borderlands is a good example, Borderlands 3, where a lot of people basically are saying that Borderlands 3, the Xbox Series X version of it, is just a ray trace add-on of the PS4 Pro version, or the Xbox Series X, the Xbox One X version, just with ray tracing. Is basically what I've been hearing, or it's 60 frames per second. Now, when you look at the PS5 version of the game, when it gets built from the ground up, the amount of difference I see, even if I play the PS4 version, where I still get, like, if I play the game on my PS4, I get everything but ray tracing. But then when you add that controller support, you get that haptic feedback, you get the adaptive triggers, then you get the load times, and then you get the true ray tracing, where the game's built from the ground up on ray tracing, where it's not broken sometimes. Such a big difference. Such a big difference. And where, you know, I'm not having to sacrifice that. And like I said, in all honesty, the best thing about the PS5 is that controller. I've said that for a long time. That's probably the best thing it has. The adaptive triggers with the haptic feedback is just so good, where I just want to play all my games with now. Like I feel like I've kind of moved to that PC master race instead of this PlayStation master race now. And it's like, oh, I'm waiting for my PS5 version of that game because I gotta have adaptive triggers. It's like I played Destiny 2 the other day because they came out with a PS5 version, and I load it up and I play it, and I'm like, I hate this. My buddy's like, what do you mean? I'm like, they didn't add adaptive triggers. Well, what do you mean? I'm like, this is Destiny. They should have put time and adaptive. Oh, it's the same triggers as the old one. There's no adaptive triggers. There's no haptic feedback. It's just regular vibration. What is this? This is not my PS5 version of the game.
Yeah.
But I mean, like I said, that's where I've kind of got snobby with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I can assure you now, everyone that's on the waiting list for the PS5 is probably, you know, proceeding to neck themselves even more now, as they're more and more determined to get one after your wonderful love fest there. Sony will love that, sir.
Oh yeah, Xbox, if you listen to this podcast, anybody that works for Microsoft, day and date you release a Fable game, I will buy Xbox Game Pass. I will pay a full year subscription of it out of my own pocket just to play Fable, and I might even think about, if it's available, to buy an Xbox Series S. I'm putting it out there. If you're listening to this, this is how diehard I am. Now, if you make that Fable game an MMO, you're not getting my money. You're not getting it. But you make a true Fable 4 or new Fable game that's good. It actually doesn't even have to be good, because I just love Fable. If you do that, I will buy. I put it on this podcast today that I will buy a Series S or a full year of Game Pass, whatever's at the time accessible to me. Just so you understand that that's what I want. Now, don't tell me that you've got Halo, because Halo hasn't been good since Halo 4. So
now,
that's what you get. That's what Xbox gets.
Do I have to split some of this Xbox Australia check money they send me now for that endorsement, sir? How much is that gonna cost me? We'll have to figure that out afterwards.
Oh, I don't know.
Look, as we're coming to what,
$3 so I can buy Xbox Game Pass for the premium for 3 months.
We can possibly do that. That's about as far as it'll stretch, I think. So we'll see how we go there. But look, I've really enjoyed this conversation today. I knew I would. It's been fantastic. You're so passionate and knowledgeable on games in general. But I do want to turn to one last final thing, if we can, before you do your self promotion of your new show. Obviously, you are locked in a battle here, a battle of wills. We've seen massive battles in the past, obviously, Sony, Xbox, Nintendo, Sega, whatever happened to them. We've seen massive battles, but you're a battle for the ages against the master himself, Tricky Mick, and yourself. You're in this bet here for who can win this BeLegit, I think. What did you think of it accepting this bet? And do you feel guilty, taking on a disabled older gentleman, with one eye? How did you think that was ever going to play out fairly?
I mean, the way I looked at it is I knew that being that he's a pirate and he has an eye patch, I knew he was going to be to his dirty tricks. He's going to find a way to, find the hidden booty and, find a way to cheat the treasure to make sure he can rise on top. Now, for me, unannounced to a lot of people, due to the fact that, at this current time, I'm just sitting at home, not doing anything. I mean, I have a lot of free time, so I kind of knew that, even though he does play video games at work and, I don't know if he just brings it with him or he brings it in. I'm pretty sure one day he's just going to bring in a VR headset that just attaches and he can just drive a truck while playing PlayStation. But
it's a terrifying thought.
Yeah, I just knew that I could probably beat him just because I know that for him, there's too many things where he's just going to try to play a lot of he's a big ratter. He loves those rat plats, and he's very much in the trophy side,
supporter.
Right? And that's where I knew that where I was going to win was he's going to sit there and go for these games for trophies, and I'm just going to play the games to play them. And I mean, when the competition, just for those who don't know, you would basically have to do what's called BeLegit games. Now, with that, the rules are a little loose, but not super loose, but they're allowing basically any game over 7 hours to count as a point. Any game over 20 hours counts as 2 points. Now, I argued that any game over 40 hours should be worth 4 points, but, they're not letting that go in. But the whole point of that is you have to play games that are at least long enough to count that, or an older game. If you play games like we counted Donkey Kong Country 1 because and the trilogy actually counts on the old Super NES. And the reason why is because if you can beat that game in 3-4 hours, then you're really good at it. But if you actually play it like a normal person and you're not like a speedrunner, you're probably beating it around the 6 or 7 mark, and I think that's why they count them. So I knew for myself, where I know he's going to be playing Division 2 like a pirate and hunting for all that loot and, playing a lot of rat plats, I knew I could take him on in that bet and win. And I mean, as it is, I'm going to probably end February here having more points than the winner last year had. So just a sneak peek.
Yes.
Right now, my total is 30 points. Last year, I think it was 36 points took first place. I'm already partially through Left 4 Dead 2 on my PC because I got the PC now, so I can play all my PC games. Dust the dust off the KOTOR 1 and KOTOR 2. But I'm playing Fable Anniversary Collect Edition. I'm playing Left 4 Dead 2. I've got KOTOR. I'm a couple hours away from beating Persona 4 Golden. I've got The Forest almost done. I've got a lot of games to do. So I figure probably I'm going to beat that 36, if not 40 points by the end of the month. So, I mean, the bet may be small, but I know he tried to... He tried to sneak his way out of it, but I told him he wasn't allowed to. So, but that's the way she goes. You got to be in it to do it.
That's right. You're in a solid position. Of course, a tricky customer, as we all know. But do you think, and what's become more obvious in the last few weeks, is that you don't take on an old dog and not expect to see some new tricks. And I was very impressed. I tipped my digital hat to the inclusion of Devious Dungeon. But what's become more apparent recently with this Loot Hero DX, a 15-minute plat that apparently is also about to be pushed through under this guise of 2 points or 1 point, it's become very obvious here that Tricky has well judged judge the council. Now, the council are very well known for enjoying games. They don't play many, and not for longer than 5 minutes. They definitely don't finish anything. So their knowledge of games has become apparent. There's not a lot, outside of the how long to beat site. Thank God for that. I think Tricky may have a few tricks up his sleeve, perhaps, with this, and it's made me more interested in when my time opens up later this year to really test the knowledge of the council, sir. And we'll see what we can get in there, I think.
Well, that's the big thing. Like, it was quite surprising to me that in the beginning, I've made a spreadsheet. I've done all this extra stuff that makes it so that I can actually see. It's got it in. So as soon as I enter something in, it like automatically calculates my points, automatically does everything. So, like I put all the how long to beat hours in all the games. And so I haven't put my actual time because I can just check that through PlayStation. But it's funny to see because a lot of the games in the beginning of the year, I was like, okay, well, Mortal Kombat X is like 5 hours. It was, what was it, 6 hours. I'm like, I don't see that as being a legit game because, you could skip the cutscenes, you could do this, you could do that. Like, I don't count it. I don't count this game either, and I don't count this game. And then when I brought it to the council, they said, yeah, sure thing. So I was like, okay, well, if you're going to count that, it's one of those things where with talking with some of the people on the council, it's kind of like you were saying that the knowledge on video games is there, but they do fall heavily on certain people for that knowledge. And you know what? Everybody's gaming experience is different. And that's the big thing is that, like we talked about today, some games you would say are good and some games I would say were bad. We might be the same game we're talking about, but when it comes down to it, in the end, especially with all this stuff, is I know what he's going to do to do certain things. And if I really wanted to, I could do the same thing. I was actually talking with Joe the other day. I'm like, hey, Joe, quick question for you. He's like, what's that? I'm like, what would be the chances of someone just taking their old memory card for PS2, hooking it up to their computer and downloading all these saves that were just before the final boss on all these big games? Or finding saves, or like having your own saves of all the games on PS2, plugging in that into your console, popping in a game, or even doing it through an emulator through your computer. There you go. Here's your computer. Download a save that's like, right before the end. Put that in the game and then just be like, okay, click, click. Oh,
that sounds like you're
final hit. Final hit against the boss. Look at that, 2 points. And I mean, that's the big thing, right? Is that when we get into these older games, that's the one big thing. Is like, how do you legitly count half these things? But you know what? In the end, I'm just gonna play it the way I'm gonna play it. Is just do it naturally and play games I want to play that are legit instead of trying to do the what can I play that the council will allow? Like, I'm still sitting in that. Okay, this is a 6.5 hour game, and this is like yesterday I bought some games. Somebody was selling a PS2 folder of games, and I bought it for $20. And I had like all Champions of Norath, and one of the games in it had the entire Ratchet and Clank collection. Cool. Bully.
Oh wow,
yeah. It was $20. I mean, I didn't tell them how much it was worth. But one of the other games I had, and it was 007 Nightfire, and I'm like, man, I haven't played that. I played that in the old. Oh, wow. I played that on the GameCube at my buddy's place, but I never finished it because, as you know, I was grounded, so I never got to finish the game. So I'm like, I'm gonna get the PS2 out, pop it in there, and I'm gonna play that. It's 7 hours, but for me, that's what it is. This is just an enjoyment thing, where the real person I'm worried about taking my title from me is my own best buddy, Joe, Mr. TMNT himself. Now, the only saving grace I have is that I've mentioned this multiple times to him. I'm like, dude, you need to post your stuff. It's not going to count. And he's like, oh, I'm just too lazy. I don't want to do it. It's too much stuff. I got to worry about too many things. And I'm like, dude, if you would literally be on my butt, because a lot of these games that I'm beating with Joe. So like Borderlands, we beat together. Donkey Kong, we're beating together. Like, we're doing all these games together. And especially now with us doing the JKGaminNstuff, there's a lot more stuff we're going to be playing together. And so, my points would be his points. And so there's a lot of games like Secret of Mana. We're doing that together through he's remote playing with me, and we're playing that together. And it's like, he could easily take over. And that's my real, he'll
well, it's on the record.
Yeah.
It's on the record now.
Yeah.
As you've perhaps heard of me, sir, my great enjoyment obviously is playing games. My greater enjoyment is fucking with gamers. So I proposed an idea of perhaps a coalition between Joe, Tricky, and myself. I think that would be a powerhouse to come against you for later in the year. So don't relax just yet. But look, I've really enjoyed the conversation today. Could you spruik your new endeavors a little bit and where people can find out about you guys?
Yeah, so the new endeavors is called JKGaminNstuff. Right now, we have the name, we have the logo, we have the ideas. It's basically going to be me and Joe doing some of the old shows we did on Game Stuff, where we did a pass or play, where we told people whether they should pass or play on games. Like breakdown conferences, live reactions, all that kind of stuff. We're just finding a way to do it. Now, at this current point in time, I have a Twitch that's not very active, and which would be more active now that I have a computer. So that's going to be at JKGaminNstuff. Like I said, no G, one N, and then it's just N. Not A and D, just N and stuff. You'll see the logo. And then with that as well, we have a Facebook group, which also has the new logo. No, I did put the new logo on. It has my own custom made art from years and years ago when I came up with the idea for JKGaminNstuff 3 years ago with Joe, that we never, continued on doing. So with that, it's just going to be us doing that. And then also a big push for those that don't know, because I don't really try to talk about it too much because I keep on talking about it and other people keep on doing it. I'm also going to be going for the world record in the Call of Duty Battle Royale longest time playing record, which I was going to be first, but the rules said I had to do certain things, and then I found out I don't have to follow those rules. So with that, I'm now going to be doing it and going for the 128 hours mark to then not only beat the Battle Royale record, but the Call of Duty record and first-person shooter record and squad record. So that's my goal, and I'm going to be doing that through JKGaminNstuff. And just right now, when it comes onto the podcasting side, we're looking into a few options, and we'll let everyone know if you follow us on Twitch and Twitter and the Facebook group, or even, like I said, if you join the Loot Bros podcast. That's where Joe's fourth chair right now, so you can put some information there, or talk to CJ. He'll keep up informed of where we go podcast wise, but definitely we're going to have YouTube videos, Twitch, all that. It's just all in the pipeline. So we'll start just blasting content everywhere. That's awesome. And everybody will know. So it's just when. It's all down to a when.
We'll get some info in the show notes as well. And of course, if you're looking for some new content, if time has opened up for you in your schedule, then check these guys out. Look, just the passion, the energy. It must be wonderful to be young and do all that. I'm just happy if I can turn the system on these days. But you're inspiring me. You're inspiring me to push further and to push harder. So once again, thank you so much for giving up your time today. It's been great to finally have a full conversation with you.
Well, nice to have you too, CJ. It's nice to be on the show.
So once again, thank you to Kory for dropping by. It was a great conversation. So it was almost like a private conversation this time. I really enjoyed the pace, I suppose, this week. We've had these people talking a lot about their own gaming journeys to number one, in particular in the last few weeks. It was nice today just to sort of chill back, talk some PS5, talk some indie. Look, there was even some PC love in there as well. And I suppose just a little bit about our gaming and why we game and how we love to game, I suppose. A very enjoyable conversation. So as I alluded to in the episode, but many of you know already, we're now on the home stretch for Push2Plat. This has been such a fun project to undertake, and I thank, of course, all the Patreons from the beginning to present day, and the ones sticking with us as well for the final month of shows. I anticipate we have about 5 more shows to come at you, which should see us climaxing, lovely I suppose, over the opening of April to see us out. Now, obviously the shows will remain up on YouTube and on most podcast providers for some time after that, courtesy of our wonderful Patreon sponsorship. I do hope that you choose to come and listen over these next few weeks. We have one more new guest to bring to your first timer on Push2Plat, and the other remaining shows will all be returning guests that I'm really looking forward to talking to live one more time. I'm sure the conversation will continue, but this will be a chance for us to share our conversation with all of you one last time. I'll also take a really brief opportunity to thank the people that reached out in the last week or so. I know some people, shock horror, have actually just stumbled onto the show, or perhaps commiserations for the first time, and I received some lovely messages about certain episodes they'd listened to or they'd enjoyed. It really has been an amazing project to talk over, almost coming on 3 years, I suppose, to gamers from around the world, and I think we've put a voice to many names that some of us within the community know, and perhaps now some of us will know better as a result of this. And I hope, if nothing else, this project has shown that we're all in this together, I suppose. So next time you see a name or whatever, reach out, because who knows, the story behind that person could be fascinating. Now, we're going to skip the shout-outs for this week, but they will be back next week and for the final few weeks. So if you want to get a shout-out before we wrap up for the year, drop in and do so. As always, it's been a pleasure to talk to you, as it will be these last few weeks. Drop in, say hi if you so wish, but no harm, no foul if you don't. May the trophies be good, the Chivos better, but above all, the games, the laughs, and the fun. I'll see you next week. Push2Plat podcasts are conceived, written, and edited by CJ Anderson in Adobe Audition, video editing in Filmora 9, music licensing by Artist.io. Push2Plat would like to thank all our Patreon supporters, with special mention to our Patreon producers Zador VP, Redbeard Rick, Ready to eBeg, MZ Nitro, Diego, and T-Bird. Without your support, this show would cease to exist. If you would like to say hi, jump into the Discord in the show notes or on Twitter at Push2Plat. If you're interested in supporting the show, then jump on Patreon, the Push2Plat Patreon, where you can find more information on how to support us and allow us to continue to bring wonderful guests and topics from around the world.